Hi there, hope you're having a pleasant day wherever you may be. I am currently on the road again in the state of New Mexico, and to be honest with you, I really don't know what to call this trip. I'm sort of looking at some of mankind's achievements in the sense of discovering the universe and also destroying the universe. So I've been to a couple of places that I think are worth checking out, and we're going to take a look at this very diverse state that is New Mexico. So let's hit the road. We'll start our journey in southern New Mexico with the discovery of the subterranean variety. So here I am at the Carlsbad Caverns, a natural feature where there used to be a shallow sea here millions of years ago, deposited layer of limestone. There was water mixed with other chemicals that created sulfuric acid that eroded away the limestone and created these expansive caverns. Really, they're huge. Discovered by a teenager in 1898, now National Park Service guides let you know the rules and have you spit out your gum, which they cheerfully offer you to reclaim once you exit the cave. So here's the amphitheater to watch the bats at sunset between April and October, I believe. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool to check out. Unfortunately, it's the wrong time of year, so oh well, can't win them all. This here is the natural entrance to Carlsbad Caverns. It's a long way down. After walking down about 800 feet, I am now walking in the Carlsbad Caverns. It's really cool, both literally and figuratively. They also said to use your library voice because sound travels really, really well in here. A brief moment of solitude here in the caverns. Rarely does the drop recognize its role in the flood. You know, this place, it's a narrow walkway to traverse, especially getting down here, and large crowds just kind of bottleneck it. So for a while the crowds were kind of ruining, the thing, but I'm part of the crowd, so. So all in all, I give the Carlsbad Caverns an A for beauty. It was gorgeous in there. Really awesome thing to look at, all the different features. Really amazing. It's huge too. As far as crowds, I give it a passing grade. And this is probably the off season too. The crowds, it's a narrow walkway that you follow on, so if you get stuck behind a big group or a slow group, or there's always just a bunch of kids that they're not paying attention where they're going, so just come with a lot of patience, let's put it that way. But it's gorgeous. I'd say come on down, just like I said, pack your patience. Now we go from the subterranean to the celestial. So here I am about 50 miles west of Socorro, New Mexico, just south of Albuquerque, at the Very Large Array, also known as the VLA. Now, the VLA is a large collection of radio telescopes, 27 in total, that all act together as one giant telescope. Now, the reason that they're radio telescopes is because there's an abundance of radio waves out in the universe, and they can collect more data and get more detailed information that they wouldn't otherwise with an optical telescope. And over the years, they've been able to not only get clarity on things that they already knew, as well as discover new things that they never would have seen otherwise without a radio telescope. Now, there are a couple reasons why they chose to locate the VLA out in this area, and it's mostly because it's shielded from the radio waves of everyday life in cities. It's kind of isolated, surrounded by mountains that kind of shield it too, and it's also a dry, elevated place, which because moisture affects radio waves as well. So speaking of radio waves, when you come to visit it, there are signs after signs after signs telling you to turn off your phone or put it onto airplane mode, because the cell phone signal will interfere with their research here, and they don't want that. Behind me is one of the massive radio antennas here at the VLA. They measure 82 feet across and they're over 200 tons each. Now what is pretty cool is to move these things into their various positions. They're all next to railroad tracks. So Yeah, I snuck a railroad in. That's right. The VLA uses specially designed transporters that can move these antennae wherever they need them. They can reach a maximum 4 miles per hour when they're loaded, 10 miles per hour when they're unloaded. They're not the most quickest things, but they get the job done. And those transporters can position the dishes as close as zero point 0.6 miles across to over 22 miles across, depending on the resolution they're looking for. The VLA has also been used in a handful of sci-fi movies, probably most notably Contact, which actually filmed here on location and didn't even disrupt normal operations, which was kind of cool. All in all, I think the VLA is a pretty cool place to check out. It's pretty neat knowing that some of the universe's mysteries are unraveled in this very valley. And if you're in the area, stop on by, take a look. And now from the VLA, we head back down south. So here I am at the White Sands Rocket Garden, which unbeknownst to me, I thought it was just on the side of the road. Apparently it's on the White Sands Missile Range base. So in order to get in, you need to get a temporary permit. You need to give them your ID and all that. And I think they're running a background check on you. So if you have any warrants, might want to avoid this one. But once you get in, it's free. It's pretty cool. You walk around, look at all these different rockets on display. A lot of them are the first of things, like the first solid fuel to whatever. There's a whole bunch of firsts here. But it's cool to see them up close. Some of them are really big. Some not so, but it's impressive to see them. Also on display is the casing for the Fat Man bomb, which was the second atomic bomb dropped on Japan back in the 40s. This is the type that was dropped on Nagasaki, not the one in Hiroshima. They also have information on the Nike Ajax and Hercules missiles. For those that grew up in Rowland Heights and are familiar with the infamous Nike base up in the hills, that's what they're referring to. That's what was stored up there. That was protecting Los Angeles, along with, I think there were like 40 sites around LA alone, hundreds across the country protecting major metropolitan areas. So yeah, there's one in the flesh, or steel, whatever you want to call it. There's also a little museum you can walk through. It has a little bit of the history of the area and the range and some of the things. There's even a podium that John F. Kennedy spoke from. But yeah, it's really cool. Price is right, just got to pass the security checkpoint first. And now we head just down the road and get an idea of where the missile range got its name. Here I am in White Sands National Monument, and I gotta say, this place is awesome. What happens is that in the nearby Guadalupe Mountains, there's large amounts of gypsum. The gypsum erodes, makes its way into this basin here. Fortunately, there's nowhere for the sediment to go, and the hot and dry conditions cause the water to evaporate. That leaves the gypsum sand, and you get these really cool dunes. The sand here, it's very hard and dry, which is kind of a surprise. It's not quite like walking at the beach. It has a little more, doesn't have quite as much give, so yeah, it's gorgeous out here. What's really interesting about this park is that there's a little 8-mile road that comes in. There's a handful of places to park, some picnic areas, but because it's a constantly evolving landscape, there's really not a lot of trails per se, so it's kind of a free-for-all. It's really, really cool. What's really interesting about it is that right now there's a fair amount of people here, and really all it takes is getting over the right dune and you can feel like you're all alone. It is really, really cool. Today there's a little bit of a wind advisory. I don't know if this is regular or not, but it's really windy today. It's actually really hard to find a place to get good audio. As a matter of fact, right now I am crouched down behind a dune because it was the only place I could find that I could actually get some non-wind interrupted audio. You do find yourself getting pelted with sand, so yeah, that's one thing to contend with. Another thing that's real common here is sledding. People, I think they were selling them in the gift shop because everyone seems to have the same one. But you find yourself a nice little hill, sled on down. Word to the wise, you do need a sled to do that, only because I found out the awkward way that just jumping down on the thing, you just stop. No sled. Let's see if this works. Oh, it didn't work. It doesn't work. But it did look like some fun. I'm definitely going to come back here. This place is beautiful. Tried to get a time lapse, but the wind sort of wasn't cooperating. But yeah, White Sands, New Mexico. Beautiful place. Really, really gorgeous.
Sand is rushing through the glass, so busy turning now into the past so fast. Turn the hourglass over. As I step out upon the plate, why must the horses run away again? Turn the hourglass over. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. When will this current find the ocean? Where will this river meet the sea? And I don't know why we float, but I like this buoyancy. Each moment lent I already spent now. It's my favorite currency.
Next, we'll stay on the White Sands Missile Range. So here I am at the Trinity Site, where on July 16th, 1945, it was the location of the first detonation of an atomic bomb. Now, the Trinity Site is the culmination of the Manhattan Project. During the 1940s, the Manhattan Project was given the task of getting all of the world's greatest scientists at the time together to develop the first atomic weapon. They came up with two elements that would meet the requirements. One was uranium, one was plutonium. The uranium weapon required only one step, and they were pretty confident in their science at the time that they didn't need to test that one. However, the plutonium one they weren't so sure about, so they needed to actually test the weapon. The plutonium one is a two-step process. What you need first is a detonation that's focused inward towards plutonium. That compresses the element, and that compression releases the energy inside the atom. And that two-step process, they weren't totally positive that it would work. So they decided to test it here at the Trinity Site. As a precaution, they had a huge casing called jumbo that they were going to use to encase the bomb, that if the first detonation went off but didn't set off the plutonium, they were just afraid that it would scatter the plutonium. So that casing was built, which they never ended up using because they were pretty confident in their science at that point. The Trinity Site location was chosen for a couple of reasons. One is that it's very remote, and two is that it's relatively close to the Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is where all the scientists for the Manhattan Project were working on the project for the atomic bomb. The detonation occurred on July 16, 1945 at about 5:29 in the morning. And it was described as the day that the sun rose twice, because the flash was so bright, and even upwards of 10 miles away, they were describing that the heat was like as if you opened up an oven door. So a lot of energy was released on this blast. Sort of strange to be at a place that simultaneously represents the pinnacle of human achievement at the time, as well as the moral depravity of war. Kind of an interesting dichotomy you got going here. Now, the detonation did create a new element called trinitite. The heat from the explosion turned the sand into like a greenish glass that was scattered all over. It is radioactive, and it is illegal to take from the site. Now, there's really not much left of the original tower where the bomb was detonated from. There's just a little bit of a mound and a couple of little poles sticking out. So it pretty much just took care of that. There was a crater here that over the years has just been covered up. Now at the site, there is a large obelisk that was placed where the weapon was detonated. And tourists are allowed to visit the first Saturday of April and October because it gets pretty hot out here. It is on an active missile range, White Sands Missile Range, so you do have to pass through a real quick security checkpoint, and technically you're not allowed to take photographs up until you get to the Trinity Site. Although it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, there's really not much to take pictures of, so I'm not sure why they're so secretive about it, but yeah, I snuck a little bit of video, but it's just basically this. Now, part of the site visit includes the McDonald house, which is actually kind of interesting because that's where they assembled the plutonium for the device. The interesting thing about that, though, is it's just a house. It's a ranch house that was built here in 1913 on the area. It was abandoned when this became a missile range, and that's what they used. It wasn't some special high-tech laboratory. It was literally just a house, about 2 miles from where the site, the Trinity site, was detonated, the house withstood the blast. However, some other structures like the barn didn't hold up so well, but the house, it's still there. You can visit it. It's just funny to think that it's just a house, nothing special about it, and that's where the first atomic bomb was assembled. I gotta say, it was really cool. I highly recommend, if anyone's interested, first Saturday in April, first Saturday in October. That's when they open up the open house for the site. And I will say this: arrive late, not early. I got here at 8:30. Site opens at 8, and I had to wait an hour just to get onto the base because the line of cars was so long. By the time I got out, it was about 1 o'clock. No lines. You drive right up to the gate. However, there were crowds at the site, but I had the crowds too, so it doesn't matter. So if you don't want to wait an hour in the car line, show up late. As far as the actual experience, it's really cool. You get to wander around. You get to look for trinitite. They have things to look at, to read. As far as it being in the middle of nowhere on a military base, they do have porta potties available. They have some food available, water available. So yeah, it's pretty well run, I thought. The military personnel are the ones that are kind of the security and things like that. So it's a pretty well run machine, I thought. I would probably come back, actually, even though I've seen it. It was cool. Like, if I'm in the area on one of these days, I'd come back. Well, that does it for this one. Thanks for joining me on this little adventure around New Mexico. I hope you saw some places that were interesting, like the VLA, or beautiful places like White Sands, or even historic places like Trinity. Hope you found those interesting, and hopefully it encourages you to maybe explore some unknown places for yourself. Sorry this was kind of a shorter video. I only went to a few places. Time constraints kind of got to me. But then again, my videos were running a little long before, so it's probably for the better. With that said, I hope you had a good time coming along, as much as I had going to the places, and I guess I'll see you guys the next time. For those worried about my radiation exposure here at the Trinity site, don't worry. It's only about 10 times the normal dose of background radiation that you get on a given day. So an hour here is like I spent a day in the sun.